talk about amendments to the Constitution, but I've never run into a single American who said I have a fundamental problem with the Bill of Rights. So let's just take a quick look at the Bill of Rights. No one here has a problem with the ability to speak your mind and have a First Amendment protection for the ability to say what you think, right? No one. Not in the camp over there, not the camp over here. There's no Democrats or Republicans who have a problem with this. Most of us don't have a problem with the idea that you should have the right to defend yourself with the Second Amendment. But certainly no one has a problem with the Fifth Amendment protection that says that you're not forced to testify against yourself and that you have protections against this kind of intimidation. No one has any problem with any of these things. So why is it that when you read the Bill of Rights, which is the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, why is it that the 10th one says that the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution — the United States means the federal government — powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited to the states are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. Now, there's nothing about health care in the Constitution. Why does the Bill of Rights say that if it's not in the federal Constitution, it should be a states' right issue? Why? They did it because they're not talking about policy. It's not about health care. It's not about any of these things. It's about power. It's about power. It's about the concentration of power and the corrupting power of money. That's all I'm here to talk about today. So let's just take a look at this idea of Obamacare and expanding this Obamacare exchange and expanding all of this stuff. Forget about the debt. Forget about all of the fact that you're not going to be paying for this, and your kids are not going to be paying for this. Your grandkids are going to be paying for this. A kid who's born into America today walks into the earth today with $1,500,000 worth of debt on their backs. This is not about health care. This is a war on our grandchildren. But put all of that aside for a minute. The reason the 10th Amendment is there is because the entire idea of this country is that individual states should be able to try individual solutions, find out what works and what doesn't work, and then let them determine for themselves. So I'm not going to tell Arizonans what to do with their public policy. I'm not going to tell Arizonans what to do with their health care bills. I can tell you, however, that I am flying in from Los Angeles, California, and that state is dying in front of my eyes. People are leaving that state and businesses are leaving that state in droves because the taxes get higher and higher and it becomes impossible to do business in California. And that is because California is trying a series of policies that are ruinous. And they are flying over Arizona, leaving California, flying over Arizona and New Mexico, and they're landing in Texas because Texas, like other states, is trying different ideas, and Texas is running a budget surplus. And the only reason I'm standing here in front of you Arizonans today is to say, be careful. Be careful about going down a road that you cannot come back out from. Be careful about accepting this federal program that once you are in, you will not get back out of. You still have a choice to make an individual decision for the citizens of Arizona, and you have a choice to look to the west at California, or you can look to the east at Texas and decide whether or not you want to go bankrupt as a society here in Arizona, yes or no? No. Because the only thing I'll say in closing is this. We're often portrayed as being against health care. We're often portrayed as not caring about poor people. We're often given this label, but it's just not true. The reason we're proposing that this is a bad idea is not that this isn't a problem that needs to be solved. It's a problem that needs to be solved better than the way the federal government does it. So now let's just talk just very briefly about this idea of expanding into Obamacare. If Obamacare was such a great idea, why is it that the people who authored Obamacare are calling it publicly a train wreck? Why is it, if Obamacare is such a great idea, that the people who have the most political influence with the people who wrote Obamacare, the people closest to Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi, why are they the ones who are obtaining waivers so that they can become exempted from Obamacare? Let's take health care off of the table completely. Let's call this the chocolate frosting on chocolate cake bill. Okay? Why is it that if this is such a delicious recipe, that the people who manufactured the frosting are ones who are suing for the right to not be forced to eat the cake? Doesn't that tell you something? It tells me something. It tells me that anything that this federal government does is going to be ruined. Now, members in Arizona, as I understand the bill, look at this and go, hey man, this is a great deal for us. Because for every dollar we put in, we get $10 from the federal government. What an awesome deal for Arizona. Where do the $10 that come from the federal government come from? They come from us, they come from China, they come from our grandchildren, and they come from the printing press. So when you see a bill like this, you go, hey, this is great for Arizonans. Every dollar we put in, we get $10 from the federal government. You get $10 from the federal government that you pay for. It's taken out of your paychecks. They give you a small percentage of what they take back to you, and you get down on your knees and worship the golden calf of their generosity. Folks, when they say that this is federal money coming to Arizona, it's federal money coming to Arizona from Arizonans. And every time you make something bigger and every time you move it further away from the local, it gets worse and worse and worse. That's why there's a 10th Amendment. There's a 10th Amendment to say that the power should not be determined by a few people who have already decided they want to get out of this bill that they're trying to force you to swallow. They want to get out of it. They're forcing themselves out of this bill that they want you to swallow. So that's really just that simple. That's really about all I have to say. But I want to just close by saying this. Don't let people make this about whether or not this is about health care, because local solutions are always the best solutions. Understand that this is about the control of the money. And let me give you one or two examples from Arizona that I learned about that might be of interest to you. Here we stand in front of the Capitol building. Arizona has a reputation for fiscal sanity and fiscal responsibility. This entire plan was apparently turned down by the Arizona Supreme Court, but now they want to do it. Now you people in Arizona, like us in California, are spending so much money that it has been made aware, to me anyway, by a representative, that this Capitol building that used to be the property of the people of Arizona is not owned by you anymore. Your government sold the ground that we're standing on now to pay for things that you can't afford. Do you know who owns that building now? Nobody knows, because Representative Peterson here has tried to find out who the rent checks go to in order for the money they got for it. He can't find out. I can understand why the government of Arizona may not want to tell me who owns the building, but they won't tell a representative of the people of Arizona who they sold the building to cover the cost of these programs that you cannot afford. I find that alarming. I find that very alarming. And I'll give you one more example of why we are against the idea of the bigger the government, the worse the problem. Again, it comes to you from somebody who told me about a story in Arizona. Turns out that there was a law that said that if a local school district in Arizona had to bus kids in to school, that they would get $2.01 per student mile if the trip was under 1 mile. If the total trip to and from school was over a mile, instead of it being $2.01, it was $2.46. So guess what happened? Guess. Most kids live within a mile of school, but what happened here in Arizona was kids were getting on school buses, and school buses were taking longer routes, circuitous routes, to get them to the school so that it could be more than 1 mile, so that the education system could get the extra 40 cents per student mile. So what does that mean? It means there's more maintenance on your buses, more maintenance on the tires, more wear on the road, but what it really means is that your kids have to get up earlier and come home later, and they're on the road being exposed to traffic risks so that the government, which doesn't own any of the money, can get more of the money and put it into the general education fund. This is what happens. I didn't make this stuff up. If this stuff were free, I'd be a liberal, but it's not free. It costs money. It costs money. And the further away that money goes, and the longer distance it has to travel before it comes back, the less of it there will be. Don't let them make this about healthcare. It's not about healthcare. It's about finding the best solution to a problem. And the best solution to the problem is the local solution. So here's my final thing for you. Let's say you want to do something very simple. Healthcare is complicated, healthcare is expensive, and healthcare is hard. Let's say you want to do something simple. Let's say you want to build a tool shed in your backyard. Now you can go down to Home Depot, spend $300 or $400 on a little bit of cement and some lumber, hammer some 2x4s together, and get a tool shed up. It'll take you the better part of an afternoon. It'll cost you $300. If you had to apply to Washington to have Washington provide you with a tool shed, how much money would they take? How much time would they take? How many forms would you have to fill out? How many inspectors would there be? How many people on the union jobs would there be? How many union drivers would there be with the trucks to bring the stuff? Your tool shed would cost you $73,900 because you did it a different way. The solution is still a solution. You need a tool shed, you can get one locally or you can get one through Washington. Make up your minds. Choose carefully. In my state, we've chosen, and my state is falling apart. Don't let that happen, Arizona. Don't let it happen here. Thanks very much for having me.